occasionally debate amongst themselves whether unhappy people enjoy their misery, which, somewhere along the line, they did choose to experience. Can a choice, no matter how painful, reflect anything but preference? It was with such encouraging thoughts in mind that I opted to eschew the comfort of my air-conditioned apartment in Madrid, and instead spend Shiva Saritamos in Toledo. Not Ohio, by the way. Spain. Yeah. I understand that travel on fast days, especially of the touristy sightseeing sort, falls into a shul rabbi's generally shunned category. At the same time, by very piously focusing on the worst aspects of travel, making sure I miss my train, spending an hour and a half in line, bruising up that tender flesh where toe and sandal strap meet, I can no doubt achieve plenty of fast day unease. Now, of course, the choice of Toledo was not without some other, perhaps less masochistic, Jewish inspirations. For the city reeks of history. It was a major, if not the major, Jewish center during the confluence of political, social, scientific, philosophic, artistic, and Torah achievements we collectively refer to as the Golden Age of Spanish Jewry. Yehuda Levi was born there. Shmuel Nagi drew his war plans there, and here the course of halacha changed forever with the arrival from Provence of a rabbi they called Asher. The city boasted a sizable Jewish quarter, today's Juderia, which at its peak supported no less than 12 congregations. Thus, I knew what I was doing. I even looked up the bracha to be said when viewing a destroyed shul. Of the entire experience, I expected something akin to visiting the house of one's youth, or perhaps the tomb of one's grandparents, and I was curious to see which of the two the city more closely resembles. In terms of offering protection from the elements, Toledo had nothing on the house of my youth, and I slogged through a day of throat-tightening weather, of 3-digit heat in the 5 o'clock hour. Actually, we slugged through it, for I shared the experience with Daniel, the interreligious diplomat of a well-known Jewish organization. In his line of work, a last-minute invite to Madrid on the letterhead of the King of Saud is only memorable if the ticket's first class. And while 1 is the loneliest number, 2 is certainly the worst for fasting. On my own, I could ignore the misery, losing myself in the sights and sounds of a new city. With 3 or more, I imagine because I've never really had 3 friends, the inertia of numbers and the distraction they provide would propel me to nightfall. 2, however, is like fasting before a mirror, being witness to the slow but steady parching of skin, whitening of tongue, losing of patience. Worse yet, the mores of traveling with a semi-stranger activates a certain stepmotherly responsibility that is fueled much more by politeness and fear of legal consequence than any realistic concern. The other's enjoyment is verified. You all right? His current health confirmed. Only 8 hours left. And to extent I now recognize as almost really quite chilling, all conversations eventually converge to the question of what happens if one of us passes out. But regardless, Toledo's old city wall and narrow winding streets were convincing, transporting. It really felt medieval. The clash and synthesis of Moorish stylings and Gothic architecture testifies to the struggle between exotic and European that is really so quintessential to Spain, while serving as a credible, picture-perfect setting for Sephardic Jewry. From the city walls, one looks out upon yellowing fields and desert-colored hills. Had its topographic merits, and is reminded of a time when an urban agricultural lifestyle were not assumed to be exclusive. It would be both a cliché and an exaggeration to say the history felt real, but it certainly felt appropriate. In my mind, already in a ripe state for hallucination, I saw little Jewesses transporting trays of bread, on their head, of course, up winding alleyways. For a moment, names in the back of my Talmud became majestically robed men, pacing to Mariv in deep contemplation. Others, both wrinkled and wizened by time, explained the day's lesson in a soft but penetrating Judeo-Arabic. There, between those hills, mothers and daughters took their Shabbat afternoon stroll. Here, for much longer than history generally allows, the Jewish people thrived. So, the imaginary time travel is especially strong in the synagogue, whose looming emptiness demanded filling in. I envisioned it on Friday night, full and humming and familiar. I saw it on Rosh Hashanah, complete with an elderly rabbi raising a shofar to his lips, and the unnatural silence of mass anticipation. I heard their silent prayer, those reiterated hopes seeking his presence, his protection, his forgiveness. These intricately carved arches, these octagonal columns, these rows of open space pointing to high vaulted ceilings, I wanted to take them for granted, get used to them, know them as anything but curious and merely historical artifacts. But this assignment, this attempt at feeling at home in an ancient synagogue, was fairly difficult. And I'm not really sure why that was, but it may have had something to do with the 2 dozen statues of Jesus Christ staring right back at me. The building, you see, was converted into a church immediately after 1492. To this day, its official title is Our Lady of Santa Maria la Blanca Synagogue. And in terms of remodeling, the Christians did little more than drape the Aron Kodesh in fancy Christmas lights and expensive icons. Looking at the Christian altar in this sacred space had a simultaneous effect of a punch to the gut and a slap in the face. Despite myself, I was pissed. This is my history, my people, my fucking building. So who the hell are you erecting bloodstone idols with ridiculously well-defined abs, forbidding me from taking pictures, charging me for entry when, whenever the hell I want, I could conjure up a standard mincha, and 10 dudes would appear out of nowhere and start shuffling and coddishing, and the docent would be too damn ashamed to ask to stop. And some Chinese tourist would reverently watch and even secretly take some video and post it on YouTube, and we just own the place so much that all the Jesus idols from the whole damn world come crashing down and bring us all back to Jerusalem. I was very frustrated and indignant and wanted very badly to spit. The issue at hand was not the church's right to annex spiritual territory, which is upsetting, but not in the existential sense. For the record, the Muslims got it much worse. The St. John of the King's Church, an immense and towering structure in Toledo, maintains as its entranceway and coat room the entirety of a previous mosque, with some Arab calligraphy still decorating the walls, like a grand gold-embossed example of one-upping. Rather, it was a mix of many thoughts that spawned anger in my heart. I hate that Toledo markets itself as a symbol of la convivencia, the period of relative tolerance and diversity between Muslims, Christians, and Jews. I don't really know who gets to make these decisions, but in my mind, all potential candidates for international symbol of peaceful coexistence must pass the following test. Did one ethnic group ever tell another to leave his country or die like pigs? A plaque celebrating the Spanish expulsion still hangs in Toledo's cathedral, and I wonder if the tourists buying those stupid t-shirts, Toledo, 3 religions of tolerance, would appreciate the irony in Germany, 2,000 years of Jewish history. I hate that this is a tourist trap, for it only drives home that the Golden Age no longer exists. In the end, my visit didn't bring back the nostalgia of an old home, but the mourning of an ancestor's grave, a pain only magnified when touching and exploring the still visible skeleton. This great culture, which produced such powerful minds and ideas and influence, now produces postcards. This was the highlight of 2,000 years. This was a temple. Now it's in ruins, and we visit it like Disneyland. As it turns out, the bracha upon seeing a ruined shul is reasonably well known. Baruch Dayan Emes. Lastly, and most forcefully, I hate that this is all we got. Toledo's cathedral is overwhelming in design, detail, and the artifacts it contains, and the financial power it represents. In comparison, the synagogues are pathetic. Here I am, at a pinnacle of Jewish history, and all I can see is an asterisk in the Toledo guidebook. That's us, the Jewish people, the asterisks of world history. Spanish Jewry, when viewed in the context of Spain as a whole, is probably something like Jerusalem's Armenian Quarter. We can wonder out loud. That's interesting. Now let's go look at the real stuff. Oh no. So that's the last page, shouldn't I? That's it. Oh my god.
This would have been better if this was like right before Dick goes to reveal himself.
Right. Okay. So, one of the... Now we rewind a little bit. Yeah, rewind. Armenian Quarter. Wonder out loud. That's interesting. Now let's look at the real stuff. Because one of the details of the Messiah's arrival that often goes unexplained is just how quickly and silently we move from blip on the map to center of the world's attention. We just take it for granted without recognizing how great the jump is. Yes, granted, Jews have played a disproportionately large role in world history. Okay, we invented IMA. And we've earned more than our fair share of newspaper headlines. But there are days when we don't make the front page. Thus, even in contemporary New York City, the most successful, secure, and culturally influential Jewish community in world history, certainly safer than anything in Tanakh, where Jews are a truly dominant force. They will never be the center of a New York City tour. We are an asterisk, and when we leave, tourists shall purchase merchandise bearing the likeness of a bagel. Assuming that our religion exists in order to somehow affect or influence the universe and all humanity, this is a very troubling realization. So, I mourned it all. The re-sweetened history, the loss of a community, the failings of a people. It worked. I was miserable, and went inside Toledo's very extravagant cathedrals and churches. I always took the opportunity.